Starbucks, Amazon, and Trader Joe's are just some of the companies that have faced workers organizing with a union this past year.
According to the National Labor Relations Board, more than 2,500 union petitions have been filed between September 2021 and October 2022, the most the agency has seen in 6 years. But the board is warning the resources to fund these union movements is quickly running out. The board and several unions are calling on Congress to increase the board's budget before year's end. If Congress does not approve more funding, the agency says it will have to reduce its already slim staff and will leave workers seeking to organize at a disadvantage. One of the groups pushing for more funding is the International Association of Flight Attendants. And joining us now to discuss the issues facing the board is Sara Nelson, president of the union. Sara, thank you so much for your time today. Before we get into the labor board, I want to talk about the flight that experienced that severe turbulence. Just how common is it for planes to encounter turbulence like that?
Well, this is why flight attendants get you to put your seatbelts on. This is the best way you can be protected. Turbulence has actually become more and more common as climate change and the climate crisis has increased. We see more severe weather patterns. We see more clear air turbulence that cannot be seen or detected before it hits. And it is the most dangerous occupational hazard in our work. And this is something that we have to pay close attention to, and it's also why our union is so adamant that we attack the climate crisis.
So several people we know were hurt in this incident, but what risk does turbulence pose to the plane itself? Excuse me. We saw that video where things were hanging from the ceiling, things were all over the floor. What happens now to that plane? Obviously, the repairs need to be done.
So it's very, very dangerous inside the cabin itself. And we work very hard on the cabin configuration and to take these things into account when the structure of the cabin environment is put into place, down to how seats are being bolted in, where they are, and where the placement of the 300-pound beverage carts are, and how quickly we can get them onto tie downs and other ways to secure them. But the structure of the plane itself, the ability to fly the plane is typically very, very secure. We have pilots who are trained to deal with these situations. Typically, the planes can get on the ground in events like this. It's just what the people inside the cabin are going to look like once that plane gets on the ground.
A ripple effect of climate change that you wouldn't really think of off the top of your head, right?
Yeah.
Turning back to the labor board now, Congress this week is working to pass an omnibus spending bill to fund the government for the next year. Funding for the National Labor Relations Board is not part of that bill. So why hasn't funding for the agency been prioritized for Congress, and what does it mean if you don't get it?
Well, look, the GOP is doing the bidding of corporations here. And Amazon was just recently found in violation of the law. Starbucks has been found in violation of the law over and over and over again. These are some of the cases that you're seeing. But there are 18,000 unfair labor practices on the books with the NLRB. We're going to see people actually losing their jobs. So this is a matter of whether or not people have jobs at the NLRB, in addition to the fact that workers need this agency to ensure that the law is enforced. When workers are seeking for solutions as they're trying to organize and trying to win a contract at their companies, they need the NLRB taking swift action when corporations are violating their rights. And otherwise, we're not going to be able to put the kind of check on capitalism that needs to be put in place in order to get common sense legislation passed. This is a little bit of a chicken and an egg situation. Money and corporations are controlling our politics, and that's why we're not seeing the funding. But let me be very clear. We're talking about a few $1 million in a more than $1 trillion omnibus bill. This is chump change compared to the rest of the government funding. And if we are committed at all to the people all over this country who just want a fair shake and want to stop the growing inequality in this country and the spawning poverty that is taking place because people are not able to hold their employers accountable for good jobs, then we've got to get this funding in place, and we've got to make this a minimal contribution to the NLRB to allow it to do its job.
So what are some consequences then, some tangible ones that the average person, every day will see with this lack of funding if this does not go through?
if you are trying to organize a union in your workplace, and this is almost 3/4 of the American public who want this. There's a demand for unions that we have not seen in nearly a century. So people are looking to have a seat at the table with their employer and take on the issues that they care about. We're seeing people going out on strike because of safety issues. It's down to the basics that workers, the basic reasons that workers organized over 100 years ago to create the basic principle that if you come to work, do a good job, that you can count on a livable wage and the ability to actually improve conditions for yourself and your family. And all of that has been eroded away with going to the bottom line, causing a problem with safety in the workplace, causing a problem with the ability to access sick leave, vacations, any ability to take care of yourself in your life, including the ability to make enough money to be able to live close to where you work and have a decent life.
I want to end on this one. In just a few days, Americans are going to set out for the holidays, and airports are going to be crazy. They're going to be the busiest travel days of the year. AAA estimating nearly 113 million people are expected to travel for the rest of the year. More than 7 million are going to be flying. Scott has been talking about all this rocky weather. There's been a rocky year of union negotiations for both flight attendants and pilots. So I guess, is the airline industry prepared for this rush at the airport?
The airline industry has been doing a lot of hiring, and they have been putting in place a lot of incentive pay to try to attract people and also to get people to take on more overtime hours. These are temporary fixes, though. So the union negotiations that are going on now are about fixing the problems that have been created by 20 years of austerity following 9/11. These jobs are no longer jobs that parents are telling their kids, this is a great job, come join the airline industry, it's a great place to work, and we're working on fixing that for the long term. So you saw a 99% strike vote from Delta pilots. That showed the company that they were serious about making these jobs better, and they are looking at that contract that was negotiated now that would set a new standard for the industry. And workers across every single craft in aviation are in negotiations to try to fix this. So we need the airlines in the first 6 months of 2023 to get very serious with us, get these contracts done so that we can attract people for the long run.
I do not envy flight attendants' job.
Oh gosh, no. And a really quick follow-up. I know a month ago there was some word that, some airlines were pushing for 1 pilot in the cockpit instead of 2. I've been seeing a lot of flight attendants now kind of coming out and speaking out against that, just talking about overall safety. When you're talking about, the staffing issues, how does that play into this right now? I mean, that's just another thing on the list, I'm assuming.
So I want to be very clear that unions keep things safe for the workplace and the public. And the reason that there is a requirement for 2 pilots in the cockpit is because that is what is safe. And when one has to leave for any bio reasons, a flight attendant goes up to be in the cockpit too. So there's always 2 people in the cockpit. And that is critical for our safety. And so I want to be very clear. Flight attendants will not fly on planes where there is only 1 pilot in the cockpit. And this is a solution that is being suggested by the industry in order to address the shortage of availability of pilots. But we need to address it through these contract negotiations, attracting people to good jobs, and also working on scholarship programs and entry for women and people of color that really hasn't been a possibility before.
Yeah.
Sara Nelson, International President of the Association of Flight Attendants. Thank you so much for coming on and talking about this with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you. I like you guys so much. Thanks for this program.
Come back. Coming up, weather is